Oh, we're here. We're on. Hello, folks. I'm on with first John Burt from your. When do you take office, John?
January 1.
So like not too long, 10 days. So incoming Area 2 director, and everybody knows everybody's favorite, Bill Godbold.
Hey.
Hey. So let's see, John. There's proposed bylaw changes which you drafted, or was this the committee draft?
I took the laboring oar in creating a set of bylaws, and then with the bylaw committee, we went through it line by line, made changes and revisions to sort of comport with, I think the board had already had a vision along these lines and had drafted some documents, and so this kind of effectuated the stated goals.
Okay. And well, I guess, Bill, you went through the draft, and you've been a pretty straight shooter. You've been watching very closely.
Yeah, and I made a comparison between using Adobe between the old bylaw or the current bylaws and the new proposed bylaws. Mm-hmm. And so I mainly looked at the changes, and I have questions about a few things. So a lot of the changes are de minimis. They're not really changing anything substantively, but some of the changes are. So in bylaw number order. Yeah. Do you have the bylaws in front of you, John?
I do.
All right. So 4.2, which is the individual memberships, it used to have types of memberships in the bylaws. It looks like that's being removed, and I assume the board will be able to. Either the board or the executive director will establish types of memberships, life memberships, associate memberships, etc.
Yeah, and I think a big part of the discussion was just it really wasn't needed. We still have the honorary life memberships we can award. We can create other classes if we need them. But in looking what we had, we didn't have the international members as a distinction. The other one, the sponsor members, I think we just have one. So it was superfluous.
Okay. And then 4.7, this is member discipline. So this ties in with some of the other changes from later on, like the board's no longer going to have an elected president. Instead, it'll just be a director at large. Currently, right. The president.
Can we explain that? Because I think a lot of people aren't tracking that, or don't know what that is or why that would be a change. So what's going on with that, John? So it's not effectively not going to have a president anymore?
Correct. So, for years, the organization has struggled with who's in charge, and even obviously through last year, we struggled with who's in charge. And historically, the board members have done a lot of the management work of keeping the organization going. And we've just become too big for that, and it's created too many problems. So the envisioned structure here is we have an executive director who should be the face of the organization, running the business side of things, and supervising a staff that is responsible for rules, discipline, marketing, running the organization. And so instead of having two quote unquote figureheads, we now have one figurehead, and that figurehead will report directly to the board, and the board becomes responsible for overseeing, for strategy, for making the key decisions. The director at large is not, as I saw a meme that tried to be funny yesterday, that it was the same as the president, and it's absolutely not. The director at large is solely in a role just like any other director, 1 in 9 votes with no additional responsibilities other than being a corporate director, but elected by the entire country, not one area.
Okay, so the previous model was everybody will vote and there'll be a president, and the president will bring some agenda or some vision, right?
And in conjunction with the managing director, yes.
So why is this a good change?
Instead of having one person who's sort of on the board but is sort of an employee and is sort of supposed to do things in conjunction with somebody else who is an employee and is supposed to get things done, you have an employee model where it is the organization staff that's responsible for implementing all of these things, not different board members who have their own ideas. So now what we should see for each board meeting is the executive director will present a report that includes all of the activities of his subordinates, DNROI, marketing, the administrative side, and member services. We'll discuss that with the board. The board as a whole will review it and vote and provide direction. And this is the way, frankly, every professional organization works. You don't have board members managing day-to-day business affairs of an organization if you want it to be functional and proper. And that's what they've been doing.
Well, so like what problems has this caused?
Mike Foley, Yi-Min Lin.
Mike Foley was not on this bylaw revision.
Mike Foley was a president that, from my understanding, created an awful lot of problems and dissension within the organization, who was eventually removed by the board, and then they rewrote the bylaws to protect their ability to run the organization instead of the president, which put Yi-Min in a pickle. And this finally eliminates those roles.
Well, yeah, I mean, they changed the model because not because of what Mike Foley did, but because they had a political challenge. They thought that somebody who was not approved would win that office and then have the power to fire employees. That's why they changed the bylaws.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there. Actually, a lot of my history I've gotten from you. So
right, that's why I'm telling you. Like this wasn't a reaction to Mike Foley exactly. It was they were afraid that Mike Foley's replacement would not be on the team.
We'll take it a different way. And another big point here. Right now, I am having a very deep concern about our handling of records and corporate documents. And it very much echoes Scott Arnberg's situation. And we briefly discussed last time where I had requested some records and I was told they didn't exist. And then people on the board said, well, of course they exist. And so my question now is who was lying? And why were the records not disclosed after they said they would be disclosed?
Well, so I don't know, could you give people some details on that? What are you talking about?
Sure. Last year, I sent a number of statutory requests to the organization that they're required to comply with. And one of the things was I would like copies of all reports sent by any employee to any board member in 2024. The attorney initially responded and said, yes, we'll provide them, sign this confidentiality agreement. We're putting them together now. Time goes by, I don't get any information. Finally, the attorney comes back and says, I'm sorry, no records exist. We have nothing to produce. I said, well, that can't be right because I know reports were sent to board members. And I sent an email to our executive director, managing director, who was copied on that email from the attorney. And I said, I'm really concerned that I'm being told no records exist. And I've discussed it with our current president, who says, of course, those records exist. I don't know why you were told that. I'm going to investigate. A short time later, he was fired. Since then, the executive director has been completely radio silent. I only know of the interim president who was aware of the situation and sent me one email from the attorney, but nobody has responded to say, here's why you were told that and here's why it's true, or here's what we're doing to fix it. So as of January 1, I get access to the entire attorney's file. So I'll find all those communications and emails and figure out how and why this happened. But it's one of the big things we need to fix, which is hiding information from members and not properly complying with Delaware law. As we've seen, I mean, we were suspended for 15 years and didn't even know it. There's a lot of corporate governance concerns, and I think this may reveal the heart of that matter.
Bill, do you have any questions? Like,
I mean, it is concerning if people are telling, you know, if different people in the organization are giving conflicting information. And we know board members get reports because they talk in the board meetings about getting reports.
What's the rest of the board saying about this? Like, John, like, so I mean, let's back up. I mean, a couple months ago, the story was, oh, John's going to sue everyone if he gets on the board, you know, that whole thing. But I thought there was like a meeting with the bylaws committee, right? And then so like, what are they saying? Like, what's going on?
Well, the interim president has told me my job is to focus on matches in my area, and it isn't even my job until January 1, so he's not going to communicate further. I've tried to have some phone calls with him and some discussions with him, and it's gone nowhere.
What about the other guys on the board?
Radio silence.
You haven't heard from anybody?
On this topic.
Have you sent, like, reached out, or?
I have sent emails. Well, and the attorney resigned because I told him he had to resign because he was in a conflict of interest and I wasn't going to work with him in January. So I'm not even sure we have a Delaware attorney right now.
Wait, what? Wait, hold on. What's
sorry? This attorney.
Back up. What are you talking about?
This is the guy that repeated the same old allegation that I had committed defamation by defaming the board. And I asked for, in response, in one of the letters about the records requests, he told me I had defamed board members. And I said, you know, you need to either tell me what facts you're talking about or retract it immediately. And he sent sort of just a bullshit, oh, the things you said on social media. And I said, well, what things? So knowing I was coming in last week, I sent him a note that said, look, you know, you've got a conflict of interest because I'm investigating this matter. You're at the heart of the investigation because either you knowingly lied or you repeated a lie, but either way, we need to get to the bottom of this. And come January 1, your client records are my client records, and we're going to find out what happened. But you cannot continue to represent the organization because you have a conflict and because you refuse to identify the defamation. So we can either do it legally or you can resign and I'll consider the matter resolved. And so he resigned, and now it's an internal matter. There's no need for a lawsuit because I get the records and we'll deal with it at the next board meeting.
Bill, well, Bill's also, you don't do this thing. What do you make of this, Bill?
I'm not really surprised that John has been accused of defamation because that seems to have been a go-to accusation from certain members of the board, either that members who are critical of specific board members are defaming those board members, which I mean, it's kind of absurd. For something to be defamation, you know, it's got to be false. And the board members are arguably at least quasi-public figures because they're voted on by the members. And if you can't talk about board members critically, how can you really have an election about whether a particular board member is qualified or whether a particular person is qualified to be a board member? I think I think I have been accused of, if not defamation, certainly being excessively critical in the communications from was it Attorney Jim to the Washington State in response to some of the bar complaints. So
Oh yeah, that guy shit all over me too.
Yeah.
Like
There-
I
there-
think documents he filed with the court as well.
And this new guy just repeated the same thing. No documents, we're not sharing anything, and you've defamed us. Go away.
All right. So what's what's going on with the rest of the board then? Like they're like, I don't get it. Like you guys can talk, right?
We can.
So is there some discussions or is there like a cohesive like game plan or like what's going on?
As to the bylaws, I think there certainly is. As to everything else, I'm not the person to ask. Because I don't know.
Who would I ask?
Well, I don't want to quote anybody. I've had discussions with several board members who I believe we are on the same page for the most part. And I think most of the board is on the same page for the most part. I think right now we're in kind of a weird transition period. I have not had good communication with the interim president. I've sent him texts, I've sent him emails and said, hey, let's talk and see what we can work out together informally. We don't need to handle this issue in the public forum, especially as to the records. I think it's deeply concerning for corporate liability and how we move forward. And I don't want to have this discussion publicly. I've not been met with a response other than your duties are limited to running matches. Go away until January 1.
So, I mean, okay, it doesn't make a lot of like it doesn't make sense. You know?
Yeah, and I don't know what the issue is, and you know, I understand he's close friends with a prior board member that I have been very critical of, and there were some amusing issues there and a denial that the issues surrounding that director never even happened. And I had posted court records at one point confirming that it had happened. So maybe that's the issue. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Man, this is very strange. All right, let's move on with the bylaws stuff. Let's get back to it.
So 4.7, which is discipline of membership. Currently, the current board or the current bylaws say that someone can be suspended or terminated if they've by acts or omissions brought credit to the discorporation. That looks like it's being changed to engaging in acts of moral turpitude, or if someone has been found to have violated the organization's code of conduct for members. So, I mean, I think it's good that the discredit to the organization thing has been removed, but engaging in acts of moral turpitude, that makes sense to me. You know, somebody violates the laws or does something, you know, somebody's brought up on charges, that lets the board remove them without really there being any controversy about that. Like we've seen with that member in Florida, I think.
Right.
The code of conduct. I mean, that
So this
could be
adds
good
a
or
code of conduct.
it adds a code of conduct. I assume that will be drafted by the board.
No. So I think what we envision here is a two-part process. 4.7 is really limited in my mind, and I think in our discussion, to situations like we had in Florida. The only time the board should be stepping into member discipline is in extreme cases like that. And what this does is create a member right that says, if we exercise this right, you're going to be told specifically why we are exercising this right. And at the next hearing or at the next board meeting, you will have the right to present your case and be heard by the board to have the issue dealt with. The much larger change envisioned by this is down in DNROI, where that is removed from board purview and becomes essentially a department of the organization, led by a director who's an employee reporting to the executive director. That department would then handle discipline, create a code of conduct, have a rules committee, and they are going to have a process to follow to create that code of conduct, create rules changes, and to create discipline with a series of hearings and public comment before it ever even becomes a board issue. The board should not be involved in these issues, in my opinion.
And what is there, you mean as far as member discipline?
Correct.
And so and I see that in 14.53 now, oversee and maintain the rule set divisions and code of conduct under DNROI.
But they're going to hand it to Troy?
They're going to hand it to the director of DNROI, but that will also be a committee that consists of members that are in some way democratically selected. Whether or not that person is Troy and who sits on those committees will be handled, I think, in a far different way than it's been handled to date.
So if DNROI or NROI is handling the code of conduct, will that only be concerned with conduct at matches and not criticism online or speech online or in person? That type of thing, where it's the people have been disciplined for that in the past.
I think the answer lies somewhere in between. So first of all, these documents need to be created. We need clear policies and procedures. We need a clear code of conduct, and all of this created through the view of members' rights and transparency. Should anybody be disciplined in any way for anything they say online that does not constitute a crime? Absolutely not. If somebody affiliated with the organization or with a match is doing something inappropriate in a parking lot, should the organization have the ability to step in if there's clear rules that apply? I do think so. So from my perspective, I think the answer is somewhere in between.
Okay.
All right, that's an interesting one.
Well, I know that the org has avoided disciplining people before because they've said that, it only extends to stuff at the match, and being in the parking lot is not being at the match. And
that was a very strange situation.
Yeah, that's a bizarre place to draw that line.
I think this past year we've seen things mostly managed by a particular board member who does not like to operate in the open, and comes from a very closed-in corporate middle management background, and so we've seen things play out in that way that, we're not going to talk about it. We're just going to handle it. And here's how I think we're going to handle it. And it gets handled that way. And that's just me reading the tea leaves, obviously, because we don't know. Again, we come back to apparently, we did a lot of things last year that required board approval, but the minutes, according to the lawyer, there are no minutes reflecting those decisions. There's no minutes reflecting any contract was approved last year. There's no minutes of any special meeting. There's no minutes of executive session where all the financial decisions were apparently made. Again,
That's
it brings
wild.
me back to the records issues and the things this lawyer said that I just find deeply disturbing. And I've sent several emails to the board, as many people have, saying, this is really concerning. And I don't get a response. So, again, as of the first of the year, I become the client of those attorneys, and they have to disclose all of those records and communications to me. And it is one of the main things I plan on spending a great deal of time on, is figuring out how this got so screwed up. At the last meeting, I had a question that was something about, oh, you can't bring a motion until 2/3 of the members approve adding it to the agenda, or the directors. I went, where's that in Robert's rules? I've never heard of that. So, one of the things I'm asking we do at the retreat is have a brief seminar by an attorney who specializes in Robert's rules, so we're all on the same page, and we're actually following them the right way. Any member can bring, or any director can bring a motion at any time during a meeting, and all he needs is a second, and the board has to discuss it. And it's just not happening.
Yeah. Let's see. I know within the last year, I think it was earlier this year, the bylaws were amended to, actually, it may have been the year before. It used to be that there was at first, you could join as a member and immediately vote in any election. And within the last 1 or 2 bylaw revisions this year or last year, they added a 1-year membership requirement before you could vote in area director, presidential elections, whatever it is. It looks like this draft of bylaws has removed that requirement, and it's back to when you join, you can then vote. Am I reading that right?
I believe you are, yeah.
Okay. Another thing that I approve of let's see. Well, there's going to be at least a virtual annual meeting with 30 days notice to the membership. Members can submit questions. The board will provide an update on the status of the organization, et cetera, et cetera. Will this be the annual meeting required under Delaware law? Is that the purpose of that annual membership meeting?
The purpose of that is that at the very least.
And also, I assume because the current in-person member meetings happen in conjunction with nationals, and not everybody's at nationals.
Yeah, and I have not seen, let's say, for 2024, Yeeman in January came on, did a video, said, I'm excited to be here. I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to give you regular updates. That was the last time we heard from him. There have been 2 press releases, announcements from the board this year posted online. Other than those 3 events, I'm not aware of any elected director saying to their area or to the members as a whole, hey, here's what's going on. Oh, I'm sorry, I take that back. Ben Berry, especially in the beginning, did some great podcasts talking about what was going on in his way. But those really seem to have stopped about 6 months ago. So other than that, I don't think any of the other directors have provided video or written updates to the members of, hey, here's what I want to accomplish, at least publicly, that I'm aware of.
If it's not public, it doesn't really matter.
Right. And I'm really critical of that. And one of the things I've tried to do, I've created a newsletter and just said, hey, here are the developments. And as things happen, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here are the motions I'm thinking about. I created a survey. Hey, what do you guys think about these issues? And that was, I thought, very informative and guided a number of my decisions. I sent out multiple drafts of the bylaws to to everybody that wanted it. And to some of the legal people to say, hey, how would you change this? What do you think of this? And so even the draft bylaws evolved over time with that input. And the fact that we aren't doing that as an organization and seeking member input and involvement, our marketing is old guys pulling carts on Facebook. And, look at what Max is doing with PCSL. I mean, his marketing is fantastic. He's got, a lot of young people showing the love for the support. He's using TikTok. He's using Instagram. And we're not doing anything of that. Somehow our entire marketing campaign is retweeting from the NRA posts and posting videos of old guys in bandanas walking around dirty ranges. That's not attracting new members. We're not doing that. We're not communicating. We're not seeing what other members suggest. There's some great suggestions out there of how we can bring in new members. We're not listening. Jake doesn't even respond to my emails when I try and discuss these things. So there's some fundamental problems here.
I've got a question for you. So I don't think it would happen, but let's say I had like Jim Boone. This might happen. Let's say I had Ben Berry on. Like, what would you want me to ask him?
Ben cares deeply. I think Ben has tried, and I really look forward to working with Ben. And I think we are on some of the same pages. I would simply ask Ben, hey, what are your concerns? What do you think we need to do? And how do you think we can get there? I'm looking forward to the retreat when we all get a chance to face try and collaborate and see what sort of consensus we can reach on these issues, and maybe get some competent counsel in to say, hey guys, some of these concerns are really real. And as directors, the email I got from the interim president the other day saying, your duties are really just to run matches and focus on your section was really disturbing, because that's not what a director of a nonprofit is supposed to do. He mentioned nothing about strategy, nothing about finances, nothing about success and growth of the organization, and corporate governance. Are we doing things the right way and adequately communicating with the members we serve? None of that's there, and it needs to be there. The transformative statement we made has some great stuff, and if that's the path we're taking, I'm very hopeful. If the email from the interim president is the tack we're taking, I'm very concerned.
Is that the only communication you've had from him?
Yes.
So you got one email, and it said your job is to focus on matches in your area?
Essentially. Oh, and because you were mean to our lawyer, we can't trust you to represent us in negotiations.
Okay. In fact, I wish those guys would see, well, I wish he would talk public. I'd be very curious to ask about this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and again, going back to the bylaws, the point of our discussion, if you take a look at 9.1, this should allow for a lot more of that.
Yes, jeez.
I mean, my sense is that it has been, I've been fairly critical of the board over the last few years. And it seems that the members of the board tend to take criticism personally. Like, I'm not saying that you guys are bad people, unless I'm specifically saying that a board member is a bad person. Like, I'm saying I don't like how you guys are handling things. And it seems like the board or members of the board can't really separate those two things. I get it. They put a lot of time and effort into managing the organization, and somebody criticizes that and they're gonna, they get their hackles up, but it's not personal. It's business.
Well, and I think, I do have a great deal of hope. I think there is a lot of consensus. There are a lot of new people who want to come in and change these things, and existing people who want to change things. And I think that may be the majority. And I'm hoping we see a lot of these things come the new year, and we answer a lot of questions about how we got here, once we do start getting into those records. And hopefully it's not a repeat of Scott Arnberg. And the thing is, who has the authority to say, oh, you're not entitled to see that record? Did the board?
Like, has that happened? Like, so there's somebody's like, you can't see records?
Well, that's what happened with Scott Arnberg. He was told he did not have the right to access basic corporate records. They would show him what they wanted to show him. And that I don't know what the situation is and why the lawyer told me that the corporation has no reports to produce, does not have any reports.
Like this doesn't
We're gonna find
make
out.
sense. Like, you
Right.
know what I mean? It's like, I don't get it.
Right. I don't either, but I'm going to find out.
And the proposed
And I'm gonna
bylaws
find
do
out
address
who
some of that.
instructed the lawyer to say that.
Who instructed yeah. In 5.9, the amended bylaw or the proposed bylaw change, the proposed bylaws state that the executive session minutes shall be maintained but not posted. And I assume that is that's a reaction to the experiences you've had with trying to get records.
Well,
I mean, and from what I have heard, they, in general, minutes of the executive sessions have not been kept.
yeah,
which
apparently.
is insane.
I did find that mind-blowing, according to the lawyer. But the problem is, according to that same lawyer, no reports exist. So, but I wouldn't be surprised either way. But it is deeply concerning that the lawyer has stated that the board in 2024 did not keep minutes of executive session. So take it a different way. Look at what we've seen as members, what we've seen in board meetings and what you see posted online. Is there anything in there that reflects what happened or why with any contracts, with the removal of the president? None of that appears to exist. So how, when a corporation is sued, say, for wrongfully terminating a president, the only way to defend yourself is through the minutes. What did the board do and consider? Well, we don't have that. So we don't have a defense to the removal of the president from a board perspective. So maybe we can still defend the lawsuit, but our D&O carrier is going to go, are you kidding me? We're not renewing you. Why on earth would we renew you if you aren't even following basic corporate formalities? You didn't even keep your corporation active for 15 years, and now you have no minutes of approving contracts? Yeah. You're kidding me. The whole Donna situation, there is no written record of how or why any agreement with her was approved or her termination was approved. There's no minutes.
It's wild. I mean, in theory, you should be able to start with the latest meeting and look at all of the minutes all the way back to the creation of the corporation and know everything that the corporation has done. And I mean, with USPSA, you can't.
Correct.
So,
and if you ask any member halfway following this with any legal training, I think you get the exact same response. And that's, one of the problems of why we are where we are today. And I was surprised, in this instance, we had a really well-qualified Delaware lawyer handling the situation. And again, I'm going to get that file and I'm going to find out, how and why these things happened. But it's mind-blowing.
Yeah. The new bylaws do add the ability for members to recall directors, which I think is good. I think that's because Delaware law says members have to be able to do that. So it's good that we actually have a process in the new bylaws for doing that in 6.2. Members have to submit a petition with the signatures of 150 active members qualified to vote in the area, which qualified to vote under these bylaws just means that you're a member, not that you've been a member for at least a year, or 20% of the total votes in the most recent election, whichever is more. So I imagine that will end up being 150 in most elections or for most areas. And then for area 2 or area 6, more signatures for that petition will be required. I know when I ran in area 4 a couple of years ago, we didn't get a whole bunch of votes. I think we had like 600 votes, something like that. maybe 700 total.
And there's actually a lot more to that. The amended bylaws essentially remove all ability for the organization to remove a director. The requirements now apply at the time of taking office. And there are no formal provisions whereby the board can have a meeting and remove a director.
Okay.
You're elected by the members can take you out. And if another board member has an issue, then they can explain
Start a
that.
petition.
Start a petition. Here's why, and here's what's going on. But, most importantly, I really hope that the membership will start, and the meetings will now be recorded so that members can go back and take a look at them. And I hope they pay attention and see.
I did see that, yeah.
Look at this year. Look at what your director has done for you. What motions, if any, have they brought to help or fix the organization, other than, of course, reinstating Ben, which was a wonderful move. There's not a lot of business being done at these meetings. There's a lot of talk about things that should have been handled in committee and emails that weren't read, but there's not a lot of business being done.
All right, there's one thing I want to put to you, John. I saw it. I mean, it was an interesting idea, criticism really on Instagram. What I saw was, hey, let's redefine the role of the president, make it a board member at large, so there's not going to be a president anymore. Get that election done, get everybody seated, and then monkey around with the bylaws in other areas if it's appropriate. What do you think about that?
I think it's kind of a half-ass approach to a situation we've known has existed for a long time. We are fixing an entire paradigm, not just one position. If we just keep monkeying with the current bylaws, we're in the same position we've been in for the last 15 years. This brings about a functional shift in the paradigm to bring us more in compliance, with the way normal nonprofits do business. We are not anywhere close to normal under the paradigm of the existing bylaws, and it's got to change. So we're not doing anything radical. We're just making ourselves look like we should and like all other organizations do. Well, what we are replacing is something drafted by a bunch of laymen to protect their interests, to protect their ability to control. And we need to change that. The directors are not in control. The directors represent the member, and this is a member services organization. We need to serve the members, and we need to do it transparently and say, here's your organization, here's the money, here's what we're thinking, here's how we're doing it. What do you think? Should we do something different? Should we have somebody different? And it becomes the member's decision, not a couple of people sitting around in a room telling the rest of the people to shut up and just go shoot matches. We need to grow. We need members. We need youth. We need new people and new ideas. And to date, the only thing we've done is encouraged people to go away if they speak up. And we ban them, and we close ranks, and we do what we want to do because we want to go shoot. And that's wrong, especially with our money.
Bill, do you have anything else you saw or anything you wanted to ask about?
That's most of it. I think I saw that. So the current bylaws require that all financial information be confidential, and I think that was removed in these revised bylaws. In fact, there's some in various places when reports are made regarding financials to the board is required to attach those reports to the minutes. And I assume those would be not redacted reports or vague reports like what we get now, where we get graphs showing numbers going up or numbers going down, but we don't actually get any numbers of how much money the organization is bringing in, that sort of thing. Right now, if you want to know actual numbers, you have to wait until the Form 990 is put on the website. And I mean, that's a once a year thing. And it doesn't give you any kind of ongoing picture of how the organization is making money or spending money. And it looks like this these proposed bylaws change that so that members will get a view of the finances whenever the board gets a view of the finances.
Yeah, there's some big issues there. What's going on with our investment account? The members should know that. Are we taking money out? Are we putting money in? You know, on the finances we're reporting, you know, Alan gave sort of a financial report at the last meeting about being on budget. Well, are you reporting unrealized gains, which frankly I've never seen done before as part of a profit loss statement? I thought that was absolutely absurd, but we have a ton of new life memberships. Are you reporting that as current year income to say, oh, look, we're making a profit because we have all this money this year? Okay, but what happens next year and the next 5 years when we don't have that money because it was all from life memberships? So, I mean, those are just things the members should know. How are we accounting for that? And it's really shady when you're reporting year-end numbers that include unrealized gains and losses in a profit and loss. So, yeah, we need some transparency and we need to know what's going on. But apparently there have been no reports on that topic, and the board has made no decisions on that topic, according to the records of the corporation in 2024.
And we've already talked about the records of the corporation and their reliability. So,
Jesus. All right. Well, gentlemen, John, I appreciate you very much coming on. I'm gonna, what is it? 22nd. To tell you the truth, I'm probably going to hold this till next year, till the 1st, and drop it, or 2nd. But I think people will find it very interesting.
Or boring.
What's that? Boring? No.
Or boring. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's detailed, pedantic stuff a lot of people don't care about, but you know, it's crucial to the success of this organization that we resolve these corporate governance issues and people pay attention and be worried.
Well, no, some of this stuff is wild. This makes me feel like I see if some other board guys are coming and be like, what is going on? Like, it's like, God damn it.
I'll keep tilting at windmills. We'll get there.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, John. Thank you, Bill, for coming on.
yeah, you're welcome.
Much appreciated,
Take care,
guys. Thank you.